What's up, everyone? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Today is Monday, June the 15th. Overall markets, as you can see, gapping up here 1% on the SPY, up about 2 to 3% here on the NQ, pushing back towards the upside. Ended up having a nice bounce on Thursday, followed up by some good price action on Friday. And now you can see the markets are rallying back towards the upside here. Really solid bounce right off that weekly 9. And as you can see, now we'll see if we can push back up and towards that all-time highs. We have some semiconductors leading the markets back towards the upside. So some dip ads, if you were to buy the dip last week, are paying off fairly nicely, specifically on some of the semiconductors that we talked about on the weekend. It's funny, my cat's in my room. Well, yeah, what's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. What's up, Kelvin, P1, Maria? Let me pull up the economic calendar as we go over this as well. What's up, JTan B Roots? Good morning, night. Good morning, night. What's up, Lamit? Victor Z Norris. Today's the 15th. Yes, if you guys haven't signed up for the live webinar that we have coming tomorrow, plus the live trading, make sure to do so. That's going to be in the top link in the description below. That is scheduled for tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we have live trading the next day. What's up, Terrence? Good morning, Maria, Sinna, Vate. Good morning, Wakey. Good morning, TW, Robert, Nicolin. Good morning, Cosmic, Aaron, Julius. What's up, Juan? Yeah, what's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. Let me pull up the economic calendar. There's not really too much to say coming into this week. Monday, no red folder news. Tuesday, no red folder news. And then on Wednesday, we do have some red folder news events, which is the core retail sales. We do have President Trump speaking. That's going to be at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then at 2 p.m., we do have the FOMC statement along with the press conference. That's going to be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Thursday, we do have some unemployment claims. That's going to be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. So with that being said, hey, Walter. All right, one sec. All right, my bad. Just had to let Walter out there. But yeah, for the economic calendar, that's basically what we got. As for the earnings calendar, there's really not too much to talk about as well. The main things that we had last week was the SpaceX IPO. I'm curious, how many of you guys traded the SpaceX IPO, or if you guys do have any shares pre IPO? This one moved up nicely, really opened up at 150 a share. And then we end up having a nice move towards the upside. We kind of talked about the game plan for this one, expecting it to move higher within the first couple of sessions. And then, right, within 3 to 6 months, I do expect a drop on this one. But within the first really week to a month, I'm fairly bullish on this one. Really, the key levels that we're going to have marked out is going to be the previous day highs along with the previous day lows. Flip my shares for 20%. No, I bought some pre-IPO, but yeah, I just day traded it. I'm not looking to hold for too long. If you bought some pre-IPO or you have some shares allocated, you're in a pretty good spot, up almost already like 20% on the commons. But yeah, with that being said, let's talk about the really the SPY and Qs. As you can see currently, the Qs is up about 2% here. If we go into the SPY chart, up about 1.3%. We really talked about that dip coming to last week. So last week on Monday, right, Tuesday, down in towards key technical levels. If we look at this on the weekly time frame, which we'll take a look at here, you can see the overall markets are bouncing nicely right off of our 9 EMA here on the weekly time frame. We also talked about the bounce play off our 700 key psych. That was our daily double bottom. And now you can see buyers are stepping in very nicely. And this next weekly candle, we're actually opening up already back at that 740. So for the Qs, as long as we maintain above our last week's highs, I'd like to see this push up all the way up into that all-time highs that we have here on the QQQ. But if we're looking at this from a week by week basis, you can see last week we ended up putting in a fairly fairly bullish candle here, right off our key technical level of support. So the candle that we formed, fairly bullish. The location was in a great spot as well. And I can see the trend is still very much intact here on the weekly time frame. I would consider this a weekly higher low that's now being put in the markets. If we're talking about the daily chart, you can see here for the Qs, the key level that we have marked out was our 700. You can see price basically gravitated down in towards that 700. We kind of overshot it a little bit on the SPY chart, but the Qs actually ended up bouncing very nicely right off this level that we bounced from earlier into this was in May. And now you can see the markets are bouncing once again. And we talked about now the flip back above 720 for now push back up in towards that all-time highs. So if we look at this here on the Qs, we are now above our key levels here as well. That all-time highs play is now going to be the next key targets there for the Qs. If we're talking about the NQ, similar thesis, key level that we have marked out was our 28,800. You can see price came all the way back down, bounced on, this was 2 Fridays ago. A little bit of reaction, overshot it, reclaim, and now you can see we're pushing right back up in towards that all-time highs level. If we go on to the SPY chart, fairly similar thesis here. If we go on to that weekly, you can see really solid bounce right off that 9. If we're looking at this on the daily chart, we end up bouncing right off our 730. That was our key level here. You can see buyers broke underneath that 730 only to be bought up for that push back towards the upside. If you look at this on the daily chart here as well, you can see price, we end up overshooting a little bit more here on the SPY. You can see we end up having a daily candle close underneath right in towards this daily gap that we created here all the way back from May. Buyers stepped in nicely, and now we want to see that push all the way back up in towards that all-time highs here, of course. So if we go back onto the hourly chart, coming into today here, what's the game plan for both the SPY and the Qs? We are gapping above key levels that we have marked out, which happens to be that 745. The next levels that we have is going to really be all the way back up in towards that all-time highs, 760. We can mark out a couple other key levels here as well, but for the SPY, we're going to maintain a bullish bias above our pre-market highs for continuation, or if we even pull back down in towards that previous day highs, we can be looking for some sort of hourly higher low for that continued push back towards the upside here. If we look at the QQQ, this one is gapping up. This one's a lot more bullish than the SPY, of course, and then the semiconductors are a lot more bullish as well. But for the Qs, as you can see, our previous day highs is our 720. That's quite a far away from where we're opening, or sorry, where that high was created from last week. And then other key levels we're going to have to mark out is going to be this 732. So if for the Qs, we're going to maintain a bullish bias coming to market open. We personally like to see it hold that 732 for that continued pushback towards the upside. So we can mark out this level and we can drag this over. So for the overall markets now, we personally just like to see it continue higher above our pre-market highs for a push up in towards that all-time highs, or maintain above this 732. If we go into the lower time frames, I don't really want to see a pullback down in towards that previous day highs. It could be in play, but it is a lot farther away at this point in time. The break above our pre-market highs for a push towards that all-time highs first would shape up a lot better if then besides that pullback all the way down in towards that 722, which is going to be that previous day close along with that previous day high. So for the markets today, I just personally like to see the reaction that we have off that 732. As long as you can maintain above, I'm going to maintain a bullish bias here on the overall markets. If we go on to the SMH, you can see this one's bouncing very nicely. We're actually back at our all-time highs here as well. So we talked about the semis leading the markets back towards the upside. If we're looking at the SMH, this one, still higher lows are being built on the weekly time frame. Did even come back down to that 9 EMA. If you look at this here on the daily chart, key levels that we have marked out was at 580. So nice break, retest. We had this gap as well on the daily time frame. As you can see, buyers stepped in nicely off this 580 for a reversal back up in towards that all-time highs. If you go into the daily chart here as well, this one, right, key levels that we have marked out is going to be that all-time highs, 640. So as you can see here for the SMH, we're actually gapping up right in towards that all-time highs here today. If We want to see continuation above that 640 for a push up in towards that 650 and above. If we kind of pop and reject off this area, we could see a potential move back down in towards our 620. So that is something to potentially keep in mind here for the SMH. We could see a rejection right off the bat. All right, with that being said, let's go on to some tech names that we have coming into today. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below. Also, we do have our live webinar tomorrow plus the live trading. So if you guys haven't signed up for that, that is the top link in the description below as well. Yeah, pre-IPO is different. If you're institutions, yeah, you're gonna have a lockup. But if you're a retail investor, you can sell. You're just gonna have a penalty. I'm not sure how many shares you could have been allocated through some brokers. But yeah, what's up, everyone? Let's go on to a few tickers here. Let's start off on Tesla. So Tesla, as you can see here, right now we're still ranging, I'd say more so on the year. We just had the SpaceX IPO as well, which is not, I wouldn't say the most bullish for Tesla. But right now we're just kind of ranging. We can just kind of draw this general area, which is that 350. We have our 340 other levels that we have marked out. We can just mark out this right here, that 400 key psych. So for Tesla, recently kind of broke out of this daily downtrend, and then now you can see we're just consolidating more than anything. So if we go back onto the hourly time frame, key levels that we have marked out is our 412. And then other levels, we have our previous day highs, which is that 405. So coming to market open here on Tesla, we do want to see some upside coming into today above our 410. Hold above our 410 for continuation towards the upside. We could also possibly see a previous day high bounce off our 404 for a continuation higher here as well. So keep an eye on Tesla above our 404, above that 414. Tesla, potentially you could see a pop and fade for a push down in towards that previous day close if the overall markets wants to reject off key levels as well. Let's talk about Nvidia. Nvidia is in a key technical spot, obviously not as bullish compared to the rest of the semiconductors, but for Nvidia, key level is going to be that 210. We also have our basically that 194, the reclaim back above 210 is now going to be in play for a move back towards the upside, a potential bounce play here off that 194. We can see a move back towards the highs here as well. For Nvidia, we could also kind of reject off that 210 and come right back towards the downside, kind of make a higher time frame, right, head and shoulders ish pattern, more so on the weekly time frame. But if we do reject off that 210, we can see a move back down and towards that 194. Let's talk about some of the tickers that are a lot more bullish. So we had a couple names. One of our top watches was AMD the past few weeks. This one, as you can see on the weekly chart, just continue to show strength towards the upside. Every single weekly down close candle has been bought up. We're building up higher lows here on the weekly chart as well. If we go back onto the daily time frame, key levels that we have marked out, 760s, we overshot it, reclaim, and now we're looking for that pushback towards the upside. So hopefully some of you guys watched the pre-market game plans along with the videos on my second channel that I posted last week. I've been talking about the potential dip down in towards key technical levels on the SPY and Qs, and now you can see within 2 to 3 sessions, it happens fairly quick, but already 2 to 3 sessions, we're back at our all-time highs. So we end up coming down into a key level support. All right, last week bounced nicely on the SPY and Qs. We had a couple bullish news catalysts, and now we're right back up in towards that all-time highs. If we're looking at AMD, key level is that 460 I mentioned, and now next level is going to be that all-time high. So if we go back onto the hourly time frame, really that's our key level coming to market open. If we go back onto the 15-minute time frame here today, yeah, previous day highs, and then we have our all-time highs marked out on AMD. Other levels that we can have marked out here today is going to be that pre-market range above our pre-market highs, push up in towards our all-time highs. Potential pullback, right? Dip and rip coming to market open is in play here as well for AMD for a push back up in towards that all-time highs. Regardless, AMD, I like to see that all-time highs push for continuation back towards the upside. If, let's say, for example, it drops coming to market open, this previous day high bounce would be a really good spot for a push back up in towards the all-time highs. Looking for some sort of entry, risking that previous day highs level. So let's keep an eye out for AMD upside coming to market open for continuation. Apple, this one's in a very key technical spot as well. Going to take a little bit longer to develop, but Apple, this is our previous all-time highs. Keep an eye out for this week to dig a little bit deeper down in towards that 280 potentially, and then right have this some sort of reversal back towards the upside, right? So this is what we're going to be looking for on Apple. So keep an eye on that 290 along with that 280 for a push back towards the highs. As for Google, similar setup to Apple. This one forming on the weekly time frame, you can see nice buyers stepped in last week here on Google down in towards that 350. Now let's see if we can start basing here and start pushing back up in towards that all-time highs. So for Google on the weekly, right into a key technical spot. If we're looking at this on the weekly, or sorry, the daily chart, we end up having that break underneath, undercut, now reclaiming back above. Let's see if we can break back above our, really now it's going to be that 368 for a reversal back towards the upside here on Google. As for Microsoft, this one just kind of consolidating, not really doing too much. Pretty big drop. We talked about this on the weekly time frame. Now the next key level, we could see a flip underneath our 400 and potential continuation all the way back down and towards 360. Pretty big sellers stepped in 2 weeks ago, right off a key technical area. So for Microsoft, we're going to be a little bit more patient on this one. And then for Meta, kind of consolidating here. Amazon not really doing too much. Netflix kind of dropping. SpaceX, something to keep an eye out for. We do have options coming on Tuesday. So right now there's just the shares that we're trading, which is the underlying, but options are coming to this name on Tuesday. So we'll see how that kind of shapes up SpaceX IPO tomorrow with the options coming out. And now with that being said, let's head on to a few other tech names. We'll go over some for the next kind of 5 to 10 minutes. We do have some time today to go over some tickers. So we'll go over them now. And grab some water here first. All right, let's go over some tickers, starting off with MU. This one, fairly bullish. We talked about the bounce off that 20 EMA, really holding higher lows here on the daily time frame as well. Next level is going to be back up in towards that all-time highs here, of course. So for MU, key levels that we have marked out today is our all-time highs. And if we go into the lower time frames, you can see all-time highs is not that far away, which is our 1080. If you want to see continuation here on MU, some of the levels that we have marked out, 1030, 1080. Now above our pre-market highs, push up in towards that all-time highs. Any sort of pullback here on MU, bullish for continuation towards the upside. We're just going to be looking for that first dip to get bought up here on the SPY and keys coming to market open. SNDK, this one leading the markets back towards the upside. Nice bounce off the 20 last week. And now we're having continuation back towards the upside. We talked about when do we want to look for buying opportunities, especially for swings, is the bounce off the 9 and 21 EMA. So if you guys haven't watched that video that I posted 2 weeks ago, it was a really solid video talking about swing trading. The bounce off the 20 is going to be good for continuation back towards that upside. You don't want to be buying swing positions as now it is breaking out. You want to be looking for pullbacks in longs for continuation higher. So for SNDK, this one's leading the markets back towards the upside. Key levels that we have marked out is going to be our previous day highs, which is a little bit further away. As long as you can maintain above key levels, in this case, maintain a bullish bias on SNDK above our previous day highs, above our pre-market highs for continuation here as well. Intel, hopefully you guys bought the dip on Intel. Talked about this one in my weekly outlook 2 weeks ago. Let's see if I can pull this up. But basically talked about this one, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago. Talked about me buying some shares right at that 100 key psych level. So this was 2 weeks ago on Friday. Last week, it actually came back down for a double bottom on the daily chart as well. Talked about looking for a move back up in towards that all-time highs. Next week's going to present some nice bounce opportunities. So for Intel, if we're looking at this one, right off that 100 key site, couldn't have been a better entry. Right off that 100, and then we're having a nice bounce back up in towards that 130. If you look at this on the weekly chart as well, where did it bounce right off of? That 9 EMA here on the weekly time frame. Nice kind of bull flag that's forming. And now we're back at our all-time high. So that's going to be my first main target. And then we're going to be looking for potential continuation. We'll see if we can get that 130 and now push up in towards that 150 here. So right here now, if you're trading commons, this is already up 30% on the underlying. And then we'll look for continuation up into that 150. We could see a little bit of a pullback, maybe form some sort of like cup and handle here now. But regardless, Intel's very bullish. You can look to take some off up into that previous all-time highs. And now we'll look for continuation here as well. But for the key levels coming into today, what we have marked out is going to be that previous all-time highs. We also have our previous day highs marked out as well, which is that 127. So coming into today here for Intel, we're going to be looking for that previous day high bounce. Another possible scenario above our pre-market highs for a push up in towards that all-time highs. WDC. Let's go into the daily chart here on this one. So key levels that we have marked out. 520, we kind of came down, overshot it, filled that daily gap, and then we end up reclaiming coming into last week. The weekly chart is what's key here. You can see buyers stepped in nicely on the weekly, and now we're back at our all-time highs. So key levels that we have marked out is going to be that 600. And now we just like to see, right, continuation towards the upside here. So for WDC, key levels that we have marked out is going to be that all-time highs. If we do want to see continuation above our previous all-time highs for a push towards the upside, we could see a potential little bit of selling, maybe a rejection right off the bat. But as long as we maintain above that previous day highs, we're going to maintain a bullish bias here on WDC. TSM, another one that I mentioned to keep an eye out for on the weekly time frame. This one's building up higher lows. What I like to see is that push back up in towards our previous day highs. If we go on to the daily chart here as well, key levels that we have marked out is at 420. You like to see that flip hold for that push back up in towards that all-time highs. On the hourly time frame, key levels that we have marked out, this one's more so of a longer term kind of trade. TSM doesn't move as nicely compared to a couple other semiconductors, but this is more like NVIDIA and how it moves, right? Very large market cap on TSM. As for a few other tickers, we have ARM. This one's moving up very nicely. We talked about the bounce here right off that down close candle and that 20 EMA for a continued pushback towards the upside. Now for ARM, this one, key levels that we're going to have marked out is going to be that previous day highs. We are dropping currently here in the pre-market. We like to see it above our previous day highs for a pushback towards our all-time highs. So we're going to be looking for the reclaim on this one. If we're looking at Qualcomm, this one is having a nice bounce play so far as well. This one is a little bit weaker, but if we're looking at this on the weekly time frame, now I wouldn't say we're at. All right, we should be back here. It seems like my stream cut out, but it should be good here now. As for Qualcomm, I just talked about this one, higher lows being built. What I'd like to see now is the reclaim really back above this 230. I don't want to see it come up, reject off 230 for a push back towards the downside. I more so want to see the break back above 230 for this continuation back up and towards the all-time highs. Dell looks solid here. This one came underneath our previous kind of gap fill, but it's coming back towards the upside. So if we can reclaim back on Dell, this one looks good for a move back up and towards the all-time highs. What I don't want to see is kind of this rejection off 400 for a push lower. But if we're looking at Dell here on the weekly is still very bullish. The daily broke underneath, as I talked about. Keep an eye on this reclaim on Dell for a push back up and towards that all-time highs. Marvel looks really solid as well. We are having buyers defend this daily gap. Now we kind of have this more so this consolidation that we have marked out. We have this kind of downtrend forming as well. So for Marvel, let's keep an eye on now the flip back above our 280 for a push back up in towards the all-time highs. So keep an eye on that previous day highs, hold for a push back up in towards now it's going to be that all-time highs. It's going to take a little bit longer to develop, but Marvel now is flipping back bullish. Let's see if we can get that move back up in towards 330 and above. So yeah, with that being said, a lot of these names shaping up fairly nicely. NBIS bouncing. A lot of these names are bouncing primarily just because of the overall indices themselves. So we talked about this one last week, right? The bounce off that 700. Now we're getting that bounce coming into this week. If you aren't in any positions, we'll keep an eye on our intraday price action today, right? Really this pre-market range. The previous day's range is a little bit farther away, so we'll have to use our pre-market range on both the SPY and the Qs. I'm just going to continue to look for continuation on semiconductors. We talked about some of the top watches coming into, these are the top watches 2 weeks ago. And these ones have been playing out nicely. MU, AMD, INTC. We have a couple other watches coming to this week. WDC, which is already at our all-time highs. ARM, this one you can keep an eye out for, shaping up more so on the daily chart. But a lot of these tickers just look for continuation back towards the upside. We bounced nicely on the SPY and Qs. We had a little bit of volatility last week, but we end up holding key levels on the weekly time frame. And now we flip back above, of course, last Thursday. And now we're looking for that push back up in towards our all-time highs. For some other tickers, we'll go over some. AVGO, of course, had earnings a little bit weaker. It's going to take a little bit longer to develop. Key levels that we have marked out is going to be that 400 if we want to see any sort of flip back towards the upside. If we're looking at Oracle, this one had some earnings last week as well. Everything else, right? The main thing is semiconductors, right? You can see a lot of these other tickers are kind of weak. The main thing is, of course, the semiconductors continue to push towards the upside. We're just going to look for every single dip for continuation higher. And yeah, besides that, most likely going to be it for me today. How do you think of entering a swing on INTC even though we broke underneath the higher low structure? Was it the week? Yeah, it was a weekly time frame, right? It never really broke structure. If we're looking at this on the daily chart, the daily is still building up higher lows, right? The weekly was just in a key technical area. The SPY and Qs was in a key spot as well. So it was just more so like an undercut, right? If we're talking about momentum, you can see this one didn't work out right away. I'd say it kind of worked out right away, but it did come back down into that entry. And now it's pushing back towards the upside, right? It took a couple days or even a week to work out, right? It's not going to just work out day number one and bounce and move all the way back up and towards the upside, right? We're on the daily time frame, so it's going to take a little bit longer to develop. Even the SPY and Qs, similar thesis. If you even just bought an entry right at this 700 and maybe held through a couple days worth of drawdown, but this 700, you can see we're now already back at that 740, right? This would have been a good add on the SPY and Q. Similar thing here on the SPY. Even that 730, I talked about more so if we're looking at the VIX, right? The VIX spiked up into 20 last week. So I talked about if you did have any cash, you can deploy right up to like 50% of your capital or even more, right? If the VIX spikes to 30, 80% of the time, you want to deploy, or sorry, when the VIX spikes to 30, that's a good area to add, right? Deploy 80% of your cash if you're holding any, right? When the VIX spikes to 20, that's a good area to deploy about 50% of your cash. So any sort of dips that we bought last week are almost back at our all-time highs, which is nice. Yeah, with that being said, top watch is coming to today. Just going to be looking for continuation on the names that we talked about last week and on the weekend, just primarily the semis. They're already up a lot, so we're going to have to keep an eye on intraday price action, but keep an eye on Intel, right? Marvel, MU, AMD, and then for the other tickers, like Nvidia, these ones are weaker, so we're just going to continue to focus on semiconductors. Really, AMD is the strongest ticker out of a couple of these tech names, right? The Mag 7 names are lagging behind, right? Meta, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Netflix, these ones we're not paying attention to as much. Primarily the semiconductors. And until it doesn't work, right? Until EMD starts to slow down or any of the other semiconductors start to slow down, then we'll potentially look to focus in on the other names. We had a little bit of rotation to some software names, but that didn't last too long. And now it's kind of went right back into some of the semis. Yeah, with that being said, I'm going to call it a day here. If you guys haven't joined the free daily watch list, that of course is in the description below. We have our um, ebook that came out last week. We have the following up to that, which is the live masterclass along with the live trading that's going to be happening tomorrow. So make sure to sign up for that if you haven't already. That is the first link in the description below. Yeah, with that being said, I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.